This is the Audient iD14 Mark II audio interface, and it's jam-packed with features in a small desktop-style interface that is completely USB bus powered. It has 2 mic preamps, an instrument input, 4-line outputs so you can use 2 pairs of monitors, ADAT, 2 headphone outputs, a very low latency software mixer for direct monitoring, a feature called ScrollControl that lets you do things like control plugins or draw in automation in supported DAWs, separate phantom power switches, speaker switching, Talkback creates separate Q mixes, and even Loopback, which is great for streaming, podcasting, creating plugin demo videos, which is how I make my videos, or recording computer audio like from a browser into your DAW. The converters are great, the preamps are great, very quiet and very powerful, especially for a bus-powered unit. And the on-screen mixer is pretty straightforward and easy to figure out. So let's head in and go over the features, register it, set it up, and see how to use it. In the box, you'll find a quick start guide, the iD14 unit, and a USB-C to USB-C cable that's about 39 inches long. You can also use a USB-C to USB-A cable, but it must be a USB 3 cable, and you must plug it into a USB 3 port. This is because USB 3 and USB-C offer higher power output than USB 2. Plus, if you use a USB-C port, you'll get even more volume from the headphone outputs. You'll also get some free software when you register the unit. The iD14 Mark II is small and sturdy with an all-metal chassis. On the bottom, you'll find your serial number and PIN, and there are 4 rubber feet to keep the unit in place. It has a subdued gray and black color scheme. All the knobs have smooth travel. The USB light indicates connection to your computer, and the 8-segment hardware meter shows the level of the speaker outputs, headphone outputs, and the output level of the iD Mixer app. On the rear, you have 2 mic line combo inputs. Use an XLR cable for microphones or a 1/4-inch TRS cable for line-level devices, like the output of a mixer or effects unit. And these preamps are quality. They are extremely low noise, console grade. They have an open and balanced tone and 58 dB of gain, so they can drive most microphones. Plus, you have a 10 dB boost in the iD Mixer. So you could actually drive a Shure SM7B without needing a cloud lifter, though I do recommend everybody have a cloud lifter type device because they do come in handy and you can drive the preamps even lower. If you need phantom power for condenser microphones or a cloud lifter type device, there are independent switches for each input. On the front, you have an instrument input for your guitar or bass, and when you plug into this input, it will bypass input 1 on the rear. So this will become input 1. On the rear, you have 4-line outputs. This is where you can connect your studio monitors, external headphone amp, or send audio to external processors, and you'll set this up in the iD Mixer app. If you want to use speaker switching, set one of your outputs to Alt Speaker, and then when you play back, you can listen through your main monitors, and then click the Alt button to check your mix on another pair. You can also switch the ID button to Alt and use that to switch speakers. If there's a difference in level between your speakers, you can boost or cut the Alt speakers by 6 dB. If you want the same audio coming from both sets of monitors at the same time, set both outputs to Main Mix. You could also use output 3.4 to drive an external headphone amp, for example. In that case, you could use any of these, but you'd probably want one of the Q outputs or DAW through. On the front, you have 2 headphone outputs, 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch, and you can use both of these at the same time, but they do share the same audio stream and volume control. Also, you can have a different mix in your headphones from what you have in your monitors by using a Q mix, and we'll have more on that in the Q mix chapter. On the top, you'll see 3 buttons. Press the speaker button and turn the knob to raise or lower the volume of your speakers. Press the headphone button and turn the knob to adjust the volume of your headphones. If you press down on the knob, you can mute your headphones or speakers, and the buttons will blink when an output is muted. press down again on the knob to unmute. You can also mute or unmute in the ID mixer. The ID button by default will engage ScrollControl, and there's a separate chapter for that. But you can also change what this button does in the system panel. You can change it to mono, dim, engage the Talkback, or use it to switch speakers. Back on the rear, you have an optical input that can be used for optical SPDIF, which is 2 channels, or ADAT, which is up to 8 more channels. You would use this for an external mic preamp, for example, to add another 8 inputs. And the USB-C port is also here on the rear. Now let's get our drivers and register the unit. First, come to this page and download the driver for your system. Go ahead and install. Once it's done, restart your computer. After the restart, connect the ID14 to your computer. And you may get a pop-up saying you need to update the firmware. If you do, just head through the prompts. And that's it. You're good to go. Now, you should be aware that the playback engine for Windows was probably automatically switched to the ID14. And that just means all computer sounds, like YouTube, will play through the monitors or headphones connected to the ID14. You can switch this back to the computer speakers if you want by clicking the speaker icon, expand your list, and choose the integrated playback engine, usually Realtek on Windows. Just understand that Windows can have a different playback engine from your DAW. So you can hear YouTube through your laptop speakers and hear the output of Pro Tools through the ID14. Or hear everything through the ID14 by setting it as the playback engine for computer sounds and as the playback engine for your DAW. But you must understand that any audio you have routed to the ID14 will not play through laptop or computer speakers. So you'll need to connect speakers or headphones directly to the ID14 unit. Now we'll register the unit so we can get our free software. You can do that directly in this pop-up or head to arc.audient.com, create an account or sign in if you have one like I do. Go to your products and register the ID14 MKII. Again, your serial number and PIN will be on the bottom of the unit. Once you're done, you'll have access to some free plugins, tutorials, and even Cubase LE, which is a DAW. So be sure to get that if you need it. I already use Pro Tools and Studio One, so I'm good. And that's it. We are registered and ready to go. Before recording, let's look at the ID Mixer app to get a basic understanding of how it works. On Windows, go to your tray and right-click the ID icon. Here, you can do things like set loopback source, set sample rate, buffer, check for updates, and open the mixer. And in the mixer, you can set up your no latency direct monitor and create different cue mixes. You can show or hide the analog inputs, optical inputs, and DAW returns. Mic 1 and 2 refers to the physical inputs on the ID14. The digital inputs refer to whatever gear you have connected to the optical input. And the DAW channels refer to the output of your DAW or software. For example, with a mic connected to input 1, you'll see the input on the mic 1 channel, and you can hear it with no latency. If I record and enable input 1 in my DAW, and my DAW master out is 1, 2, you can now see and hear the output of Pro Tools in the DAW 1, 2 channel. And you'll hear both the direct input and the DAW output in your headphones. And you should be using headphones if your mic is in the same room as your speakers. Otherwise, you'll create a feedback loop. Set like this, you'll hear a doubling effect in your headphones since we're getting the input of the mic and the output of the DAW. This is a doubling effect. So just mute the mic in your DAW. And now we can hear ourselves with no latency. You could also just turn down the DAW return in your mixer and record without latency. You can raise the volume of the mic in your headphones, raise or lower the level of the DAW in your headphones to set up the perfect mix. And this is just for monitoring. These fader adjustments don't affect the level going into or out of your DAW. If I play back this track and the DAW output is 1-2, you'll see that on the DAW 1-2 channel. If I change the output to 5-6 in Studio One, then you see it on the 5-6 channel in the ID mixer. If I then set Windows to 3-4, any sound in a browser or media player will come through the 3-4 channel. And we can hear all of this at the same time through our speakers connected to outputs 1 and 2. So just understand, the DAW channels in the ID mixer do not refer to the physical outputs on the ID14. They instead refer to the output selected in your software. To route audio to the physical outputs, go to View, Show System Panel, and under Analog Outputs, we can choose what is routed to the physical outputs. You can change the name of each channel by double-clicking, change the name of each mix. You have a plus 10 dB boost for both inputs, and this does affect the level going into your DAW. You have a phase switch, pan knobs, solos and mutes, stereo linking, set up 3 different mixes, speaker volume knob, dim switch, and you can set the amount of volume reduction in the system panel under Trim. Switch speakers with Alt, and in the system panel, you can choose what outputs that will switch to. Check your mix in mono, flip the phase, mute headphones, mute speakers, and the buttons on the ID14 will flash when muted. And you have your TB button, which stands for Talkback. And this lets you talk to an artist, perhaps in a vocal booth, directly through their headphones. You can set this up in the system panel under Talkback. You can use an input on the ID14 or external input like a USB mic or mic built into your laptop, but I'll choose the mic in my webcam. Switch the headphones to QA since the Talkback won't be heard through the main mix. Then activate Talkback directly on the channel or from the control section. The main mix will be dimmed, and on QA, you can see the Talkback input and adjust the level they'll hear in their headphones. You can also switch the ID button to activate Talkback.
Hey, we're gonna have to do that part over again. How about some pizza for lunch?
Return to the system panel, and here you can choose between ADAT or SPDIF for the optical input. Choose your clock source if you're using the optical input. Change the way mono mode works. Customize the ID button. And set the trim for dim and your alt speakers as we've already seen. You can also save and load mixer configurations for quick recall and change the buffer and sample rate here as well. A Q-Mix lets you set up a different mix from your main monitor mix. Here's an example. You have your main mix set and it sounds good through your speakers, but the artist in the vocal booth wants to hear more of themselves. No problem. We'll assume the singer is using the headphone output, so first I'll go to View, Show System Panel, and set the headphones to Q-Mix A. Come back to the mixer, select QA, maybe I'll change the name, And I'll pull up the volume of the mic plugged into input 2, maybe lower the playback of the DAW, and set the overall volume for the vocal mix. If you hit solo, you can hear your cue mix through your monitors, which might help you set it up. And once you're done, you'll hear the main mix through your speakers, and the vocalist will hear the cue mix in their headphones. For those who don't know, we'll quickly go over how to record a microphone and a guitar. We'll start with the mic. First, turn down your speakers. Then, connect the microphone. We'll use input 2. This is a condenser mic, so we'll flip on phantom power. And we'll use the headphones so we don't create a feedback loop. And I have my headphones set to main mix. In your DAW, make sure the ID14 is your playback engine. Then set the input on a mono audio track to input 2, record enable the track, and raise the input gain. That's good. Now, you probably hear a doubling effect in your headphones. So mute the input in your DAW because we just want to hear the direct input with no latency, and you can always add plugins later. Adjust the levels in the mixer if you need to, adjust your headphone volume, then hit record. This is recording a microphone with the Audient iD14 MKII. If you instead want to hear plugins while recording, like a reverb, unmute the track in your DAW and either mute the direct input in the mixer or balance it with the return from your DAW, which will be the mic input and the reverb, plus anything else you have playing in your DAW. This is recording with plugins live using the Audient iD14 MKII. Now let's record an electric guitar with an amp plugin. First, plug your guitar into the instrument input. In your DAW, set the input to input 1, then throw in your amp plugin, record enable the track, and raise the input gain. You can have your speakers on for this, by the way, so go ahead and turn them up. The input gain looks good, and since we don't need the dry direct monitor of the guitar, just mute that in the mixer. So now we just have the sound of the amp. Lower your buffer to reduce latency, and you can do that in your DAW or from the ID app. Hit record and lay down your track. ScrollControl lets you adjust things like plugin parameters, panning, volume, and even draw an automation with tactile control. You can think of it like a second mouse scroll wheel. So if a parameter can be controlled with your mouse wheel, it's compatible with ScrollControl. First, open the mixer and go to the System panel. Make sure the ID button is assigned to ScrollControl, and now we can use it. Press the ID button on the unit, hover your mouse pointer over a compatible control, and turn the wheel. Exactly what you're able to do will vary between DAWs and plugins, but here in Studio One, I could hover over the browser and scroll, place my mouse over a plugin parameter and scroll, adjust the volume, adjust the pan, hover over a color strip and scroll to change colors, change the tempo, and even draw in automation. But this is not just for DAWs. You can use ScrollControl in any program that responds to your mouse scroll wheel, like DaVinci Resolve, Affinity Photo, directly in Windows, and even in your browser. And ScrollControl really comes in handy when you're using a laptop. Even with a nice touchpad or touch screen, it might be difficult to adjust parameters or write automation. So pop on ScrollControl, and you can make much more accurate adjustments to plugins, panning, volume, automation with that hands-on feel, and you don't need to connect a separate mouse to your laptop. Just grab your ID14 Mark II, grab your laptop, and you can record and mix anywhere. So what is Loopback? Well, with Loopback, you can do things like record audio from other apps into your DAW, or send your DAW audio out into something like OBS so you can live stream or screen record with the audio playing in your DAW. To record non-DAW computer audio into your DAW, like a video playing in a browser, first I'll set the playback engine for Windows to analog 3.4. You could also use 1.2 and just mute the channel in your DAW. The ID14 should also be the playback engine for your DAW, and the default output is 1.2. Set the loopback source to DAW 3.4, since that's what we're using for Windows. Set the input of your track to loopback. In the mixer, I'll mute 3.4, just so I don't hear the doubling effect. Record enable the track. Hit record, and play the video. If you want to screen record or live stream with the audio from your DAW, you can use something like OBS, which is free, but there are other options out there. We're going to use OBS. First, set the loopback source to DAW 1.2, or you can use Master Mix or even one of the Q mixes if you want a little more control over the levels going into OBS. But we'll use 1.2. In OBS, create an audio input capture, name it DAW audio, set the input to loopback 1.2, then play audio in your DAW and you'll see it in OBS. If you don't, you probably have a sample rate mismatch, so either change it in OBS by clicking Settings, Audio, and set your sample rate here, or right-click the speaker icon, open Sound Settings, Sound Control Panel, Recording tab, select Loopback, click Properties, Advanced, and match the sample rate with what you're using for OBS and your DAW. I always use 48K, so that's what I have selected. You should also do the same thing for the other inputs here in recording and the outputs here in playback. If you want to use a microphone at the same time, you could create an input in your DAW, and that will also go through the DAW audio track in OBS. Or you could have a separate mic input in OBS by creating another audio input capture, name it microphone, set the input to analog 1.2, click the gear icon, advanced audio properties, and check the mono box for the mic. There you go. You could also add a webcam, create a video capture device, name it webcam, choose the webcam you want to use, And that's it. You're all set up and ready to stream or screen record. As you can see, Loopback is an indispensable feature for any modern creator. I personally would never buy an audio interface if it didn't have Loopback. So, before you buy your next audio interface, make certain it has Loopback. You are going to need it. So that's the Audient iD14 MKII audio interface, a small and portable desktop-style interface that is loaded with features. You have your two great preamps, great converters, ADAT expandability, speaker switching, flexible routing in the mixer, ScrollControl, and Loopback. If you want to read more about it, head over to audient.com. And if you want to pick one up, we'll have links in the description below. That's the Audient iD14 MKII.